Thank you for joining us with our reflection on our sixth Shamrock Bowl win with our head coach Phil Gunning. Before we begin, I want to make a very important reflection on our dearly departed friend Ian Hughes. The Trojans are more than just a club winning or otherwise on the field. It's a family, and what's very important about this club, the reason why we're here today, is that we have a very, very strong architecture that supports us in our media team, in growing the club and growing our fans. And Ian was an important part of that. If you turned up to the Trojans, you would see him with a smile on the sideline, taking excellent photographs that have spread across our social media and helped build our culture and name. And so I would like to dedicate this interview, and most importantly, our sixth Shamrock Bowl, to Ian Hughes. Phil, to begin with, thinking about that, is there any particular picture of Ian that you really, really liked?
Yeah, I think, I shared on social media, unfortunately after his passing, that, Ian was one of the few photographers who dug into football from an inquisitive point of view, asking, rules and legalities of different things. And, you could see that in the work that he did, always trying to find, new ways to capture the photos of the action and the emotion of what it meant to everybody. And this season, we ran a fullback sneak for a touchdown against the Vikings, and the photo is portrait style, super tight angle, and all you can see is Mo sort of supermaning across the plane of the end zone, offensive line underneath him, offensive line over top of him, Trojans everywhere, Vikings everywhere, and just the emotion on everybody's face, and like the effort that it took to get there, and the teamwork and the collaboration. It really just encapsulated sort of everything that we were trying to do. So for me, I think that's just one of my favorite photos of anything that we've done in football.
Yeah, and I would encourage anyone who's a fan of the club or a fan of the sport to actually look through his back catalogue, because he is not with us any longer, but his work stays with us. And certainly I have pictures from my time as head coach, and having lots of images, probably not couching me at my better moments, but certainly emotional and important. So hopefully we can keep his memory alive as we go forward. Year 3, you end up undefeated with a Shamrock Bowl victory. A very, very dominant win in the final. And I'd like to begin with just saying it's been a few weeks.
Yep.
So what are your gut reactions now that you've sat back, you've had some time, you've had some distance?
I think most of all, I think pride in the team. It was obviously sort of we'd laid out this plan to sort of like how we were going to arrive at the third year of this plan that was kind of articulated, and a large part of that was for year 3 to be dominant, right? And that whenever we talked about that in 2023, that didn't necessarily mean going undefeated or necessarily winning the Shamrock Bowl. It just meant that the level of football that we wanted to play was going to be of a dominant flavour, right? And where there was opportunity to capitalise, that we were going to be able to sort of step on the gas and press the advantage, where possible, and have a bit more of a killer instinct. And I think that the buy-in this year in pursuit of that goal was so far and beyond the investment we'd had in the 2 years previous. So I think that's my overriding sentiment, is just like pride in what we all accomplished, more than anything else.
A lot of teams definitely would speak to the fact that we're in an amateur league. Yeah. They do this as a hobby, and sometimes that leads to like real commitment. Yeah. What do you think the difference is, besides the pride? What other differences really contributed to like playing at the level we did this year?
I think that for us it was just the conviction of the team, the brotherhood of it all, and the collaboration, the camaraderie of it, right? I think it's easy to find people in all clubs, certainly clubs that I've been a part of, teams that I've been a part of, teams we played against, where you'll find those like type A killers who'll go out and I'm going to win, I'm going to kill, so that I'm successful, we're going to win, blah blah blah. But I think for the most part this year, we had a collection of people that were sort of the other side of that coin, where I'll die so that this team's successful, right? I'll make the I'll make the sacrifice required so that we can accomplish the goals together. You know, it's not just about the individual glory, but you know, we're here for the cause and we're all about the mission. And I think that belief and investment was what served us best.
It's hard because building that kind of culture takes a while.
Yeah.
And certainly you need the right, not just one or two, as you mentioned, type A personalities. You need a whole conglomerate, whole mix around it.
Yeah.
And I'll give you your flowers because you're not likely to give your own ones. And it's a bit uncouth anyway. But the fact is that as I've been very privileged to watch your time as head coach and see the development of that culture through you leading the ship. Yeah. What do you think, is there any reflections that you have outside of football that you can take some of these culture building references that you've had throughout the Trojans time?
Yeah, I think my, not just coaching, I think my entire experience of the Trojans has been tremendously positive in many facets of my life. I think that the above all, I think like the embracement that I've had from the club and the opportunity to do what I have wanted to and to have a go at, you know, trying to accomplish what we did over the last 3 years, has given me an awful lot of confidence in other aspects of my life in terms of like being more pro-risk and taking opportunities to try new things, you know, just to step out of my comfort zone really more than anything else, because there might be something really good on the other side of that, and at the end of the day the regret probably isn't going to be much more than the you know, the pain of staying the same anyway. So I think for me, like there's been an awful lot of lessons. I think certainly the last 3 years my interpersonal skills have gotten a lot better. You know, my ability to, you know, forgive human error has certainly gone up a great deal. But I think, you know, above all else, like it's been about trying to, you know, find ways to work with people and like kind of tap into the human element of it and really try and bring the best out of people. Has been the thing I think I've had the most growth at.
Yeah, I love hearing that personally because I'm not laughing at the fact that these skills have grown within you, but having had the experience of trying to manage 70 different players of quite honestly a large spectrum of ability, and it does take quite a lot of talent, I think, to actually be able to communicate to that vast variety of characters and get them on the same page. Any moments that you may look back on 5 months, 10 years from now and think, yeah, actually that's the moment that will stick with me with most pride?
Probably not, to be honest. I think that there is no one moment that kind of led us here or was more important than the rest. I think that, you know, the alchemy of it all just like brewing together, like every single bit of it, positive or negative, was sort of just as important as the rest. You know, certainly had some adversarial situation not reared its head, you know, would we still have arrived here? You know, had it only been positive? Had there been more negativity, you know, would it have derailed other things? So I think it's just, you know, being able to kind of keep things on tracks as best as possible, like at all times, and it's all valuable experience. It's all valuable input into the eventual like outcome.
Yeah, and there's almost an element of like harder won makes it a little bit sweeter.
Yeah.
It would be remiss of me not to mention the fact that when we sat here 3 years ago, we were looking back at a Trojans team that had a number of key pieces in place that were proven winners. We talked about John Asiri, a friend of ours who's excellent, who people will know in this league as one of the finest running backs ever to grace the field. We were looking to lean on him and an O-line that was mostly populated by Irish starters, and that didn't end up being the case. So that was one of those challenges that you walked into straight away. And how did you feel about, at that point, knowing that you would be without these pieces? What was the element that helped you stabilize going forward?
I think that, you know, there is no such thing as a, you know, it's not a problem, right? It's something to be overcome. Like it's opportunity for other people. You know, over the course of the last few years, you know, we've had a fair few people, you know, that have contributed running back. You know, Darren Quinn joined us. You know, Adam McElwee certainly had a massive role over the last sort of few years. You know, all of those people got opportunities. You know, because John had ended up playing 0 snaps for us after all those best laid plans. But all of those opportunities wouldn't have been afforded them otherwise, right? And they wouldn't have grown. We wouldn't have explored other ways to do things, other concepts to install in the offense to take advantage of those guys' skills. And like it all kind of feeds into the same answer as the last question, right? Like if John had stayed and we had leaned on him, you know, would we have leaned on him too heavily? You know, would his would age have caught up with them, would have skills of, attrition to the point where we maybe, again, wouldn't have won this year. So I think that outlook in terms of always be moving forward and always be searching for solutions was something that became evident early on, that not just me, all of the staff, I think we all had to have a very sort of strong hand in making sure that the players always felt that there was a plan and there was a next thing that we were doing, and it never was, oh, this person isn't available. It was just, this is what we're doing instead, and we're all just going to believe in it and make it work as best we can.
Yeah, and again, I'll reflect on the fact that personally, I've been involved in just about every Trojans team to a greater or lesser extent, and it was a privilege to be involved in this team because it was probably my favorite team, quite frankly, and that's a testament to you. And one of the key differences that I noticed is that necessity is the mother of invention, right? I was very lucky when I was head coach to have some players who played at college, Drew, and others in the US at a very high level, that it became much more simplified. What was very clear about this Trojans team in comparison, certainly on the offensive side of the ball, is diversity and upping the skill and the level of the game and knowledge of the game. And you can see that in players becoming better football players, becoming more understanding of the game, its key concepts. And that's a struggle, I know that is. But I felt like towards, certainly as that inertia and that pickup happened, that you felt more confident or growing confidence in that understanding. And I was wondering if you could reflect a little bit on certainly the growth of your team and players in becoming better at their jobs.
Yeah, so I think a lot of that just comes down to their investment in their own learning as well. Obviously, we put playbooks in front of the guys, and we'll have some conversations about why we maybe do or don't want to run certain concepts, and particularly if we're deciding not to run something that we've done in the past that somebody has a particular affinity for, they feel that they were good at, but it doesn't fit what we're doing now. I think the understanding of the why and everybody's ability to articulate their impact on an individual player concept certainly went up, and then that's where peer-to-peer learning came in, right? Because it's no longer just about the delivery from me or one of the other coaches. It's one player talking to another, talking about how they see things in a way that I don't, because I'm not playing that. I've never played that position. Right. They're able to see, oh well, the other team, the offense is lined up like this. They like to run like this right combination when they're split out here. When the tight end's in here, we're more likely to see this. I can't cover this guy all the way out here because as a safety, I'm not fast enough. So we're going to make this adjustment instead of the play that was called. And all of that kind of the sort of bell curve that was on that ramp up in terms of the ability to execute on the field was certainly a massive difference maker towards the tail end.
If you had to wave a magic wand, or you had to predict in 6 months, or how would you layer that ability up? What would be the next step for players that are starting to actually actuate the process of football in their own terms?
I think that more ownership. So this year was the first year that we really dipped our toe in the water of player owned and like true ownership, not just not a trips check on defense or we want to get out of this run on offense, because true ownership of changing plays, right? Getting us in and out of different versions of same play calls, in and out of pressures on defense, in and out of runs, passes, different runs and passes on offense, changing protections. I think there's certainly much more to be had there in terms of upping the level of output in that last few seconds pre-snap. That's something that certainly we weren't actively trying to capitalize on at any point over the last 3 years. That's a fairly ambitious advanced level of football to be beyond we're going to run this play and there's a certain thing that that'll kill it, so we don't like that. But the other side of that to then go further and be well, actually that's okay, but what's the thing that's really good against that, and being able to apply that and then go out and execute and kind of really be a bit more cutthroat more than anything else, about giving the players that ownership and then letting them build confidence in calling their own shots as well.
Well, you had a neophyte quarterback.
Yeah.
Coming in from high level in a different sport, it's not easy. Yeah. I was always reminded on our journey with Dom was that it takes a village to raise a child and potentially a village to raise a quarterback. Yeah. Seeing the level of performance, obviously, you mentioned about how we take those next steps.
Yeah.
And reflecting on the fact that through our journey on this team, we've learned how to communicate with different people, communicate their learning, advance their learning. How, if you had to give any advice to any coach in this island, mostly in this island, how do you raise a quarterback to play at the level that you got to play?
I think that we didn't do a great job, particularly through year 2. Obviously, Dom was injured. Most part of year 1, missed the whole preseason. Obviously, came back and played a little bit towards the end. But you'll know that was kind of, we all sort of agreed that was a bit of a wash, and we were just building a volume of reps at that point more than anything else. I think that year 2, the pressure was quite high for our standard. It was probably set a bit too high, and the challenges of that, I think that's part of where the forgiveness of human error sort of came in. I think that coming into this year, we certainly invested more in giving Dom freedom to try and execute the offense and sort of take shots and be a bit more swashbuckling in nature. And then kind of come game 3, play calling wise, I think again, coaches, we folded a bit in terms of not getting away from the ground game when it wasn't working. The weather was a little bit adversarial, and our confidence, maybe just wasn't quite where it should have been. So we kind of had a bit of a come to Jesus after that, to discuss, like we're all in on our quarterback, and the play call will reflect that forever. Good, bad, or indifferent. We're gonna basically, not to go, to sort of Mike Leach, we're gonna keep swinging our sword, right? Like we're gonna keep doing this stuff because like we didn't install it for no reason. We don't not have a belief in you as a player, and short-term setbacks aren't gonna kill us, right? Like we're not in a position where we're reliant on an individual to win us a game. Like we're performing well at a team-wide level, and that environment was very, very conducive to letting Dom take more risks, right? And it paid dividends as well. Like he didn't actually have that many turnovers. I think after that Cork game, we only had 2 turnovers from the quarterback like the whole rest of the year. But so much of that was just in his conviction in what he was trying to do, being aggressive without the fear of, if I make a mistake, what is going to happen, right? It's just, we're just going to live with it, and the team will rally around you, and we'll, continue to succeed anyway, because it's never going to all be on one person. So I think more than anything else, just having that sort of environment that's conducive to making mistakes, right? Like, the freedom to try and express himself and to play football and to be the competitor that he is was I think the biggest step we could have taken this year, was just articulating, like, we have all the belief in the world in you, so just go play football.
Yeah, and you mentioned, again, themes are concurrent with one another. The team, the structure, the belief, everyone on the same page. And for a game that is often referred to as the ultimate team sport, there's a bit of a dichotomy with quarterback, because it's the ultimate team sport in one hand, but then in the NFL, who's always MVP, or what position is always MVP? And it's kind of like there's this element that you have to weave. And I like the way you spoke about it, and the fact that if you have like the belief, the soft skills, which is the belief in the person under center. Not that many teams play under center anymore, and certainly we didn't. But then being able to like also have that structure around that supports the understanding on the ABCs and where to go with the football. And I think that personally, that we're not just in this sport for the Trojans, we're in this sport to try and to help all others rise in the league. And I think that one of the reflections I have throughout 2 decades of being around the sport in this game is that too many teams give up on building that structure around the player or a quarterback, because it is so super important, and people will then just go for the short term. And I think that that's something that you did very well of staying away from. Yeah,
I feel like that was one of the lines in the pack that I gave the board in the application was, I know you actually didn't know about this before asking, was, the pitch was essentially, we narrowly missed the playoffs in 2022, and the easiest thing in the world to do would be to just go all in right now and to try and scrape a Shamrock Bowl win in 2023, right? But that, the quote was, don't sacrifice what you really want in the long term for what you kind of want right now, right? And the thing that we wanted to deliver was like a platform for sustained success, right? It wasn't a single ball in 2023 or now it was, can we make the team the best football team that we can, right? And like that takes that long-term planning and investment and ultimately ownership that we have to give over to everybody else. As you said, there's 70 odd people that have come through the doors this year, and there's certainly been hundreds over the past 3 years, and all of them have such a large part in that journey and where we've arrived at now and kind of the place that the team is.
I want to mention a player, in Raan.
Yeah.
He was the Trojans MVP.
Yep.
Obviously, anyone who watched the final, the stream's excellent,
Yeah.
Really high quality, and kudos to everyone who put that together. You'll see the quality of player. His college resume speaks for itself, but what was important to me was not only what he brought on the pitch. And if I could ask you to summarize or maybe give some examples of what kind of elements he brought in to help us elevate.
Yeah, Raan was the highest energy competitor I think we've ever had through the doors, in everything, like not just football. I mean, like he showed up day one, and obviously there was something a bit different. Obviously passed the eye test and everything else, but the end of the first practice, we had a brief conversation. Said you look great. This is really exciting, etc., etc. But his first thing he said to me was just coach me, whatever you think I can do better, tell me. I just want to get better at this. I want to, I want to win. And then come, semi-final or whatever it was, go to game plan meeting. I came around after work, and we were all there a little bit early, just sitting around the bar at Quinn's. And there's a board game knocking around. And after he beat Peacock, I said, I'll have a go. We started playing. I was pressing the advantage. He then proceeded to stop playing to think about his next move for what felt like a painful amount of time, and then proceeded to make a move. I made a move, made a mistake, and he beat me, and it was like he won the Super Bowl. Running up and down, whooping and hollering, telling me that just because I lose at a board game doesn't make me a bad person. But that high energy fun, and it's so engaging. It's so contagious as well, right? Early in the season, he only played a few snaps a game, scored a couple touchdowns, but for essentially 2.5 quarters of a game, he was losing his voice cheering on his teammates, right? He wanted the team to succeed above all else, because that's what it takes for a football team to be successful, is, all 50, 60, 70 people pulling in the same direction, trying to achieve the same goal. There's no, garbage time, there is valuable experience for everybody, and he certainly understood the competitive advantage in people getting experience, teammates being successful, defense playing well, and everything else. So I think his excitement for all of his teammates and his competitive spirit was far and away the best quality about him.
Yeah, absolutely. And the second, he was a joy to have around, on a general level, screaming at us on a pub quiz team to lock in constantly. Yeah. I think probably actually spurred our team to win that particular quiz. But and then proceeded to pop his hamstring because he was convinced that he was faster than our fastest female flag player as well. So speaks to the level of competitiveness and also engagement. He was someone who brought a lot of people around. So they're very grateful. And obviously, as I said, a clear MVP on the field, someone who stirred the drink in terms of our competitiveness, raised the bar. But I want to speak about maybe some names that probably won't get the plaudits. Okay. That could be on the coaching staff as well, or people who have managed to feed into your thinking, that have driven your ideas forward, or really just been those important load-bearing walls or unseeing invisible glue that managed to help you with this process.
Okay. We'll start players, I guess. I think a large part of the success on defense this year was a lot of change in the secondary. Everybody knows Tommy Boyd, phenomenal player, has been forever. Well recognized around the league, right? Sort of turns up every big game. We were blessed with some kind of fortunate circumstances with Tom Goodchild coming in. So we talked about the peer-to-peer learning earlier on. Obviously, he's a phenomenal player, but the level of knowledge that he personally drove in that room in terms of how we're going to play coverages, how we're going to diagnose read coverages, how we're going to manipulate leverages, just comms, how we're going to communicate, like all of that. There was so much of that just he drove on his own. Not that the coaches weren't directing, but like you'll know yourself, like when they're out on the field and we're just back to back to back and high volume of reps, he was the person holding the standard and ensuring that we kept communicating. I think we'd be remiss to not talk about Chris Hill and Jordan Clinton. For pretty much since COVID, we've been kind of working through a little bit of a revolving door of corners, each season, even game to game within each season. And this year, we had the same two guys start every game, right? And they were phenomenal, right? Again, like their attention to detail and the ownership of the roles that we gave them and the responsibility they had to kind of again, make calls and make their own adjustments was really, really good to see. And I think that's a huge, huge part of kind of why we only conceded 2 passing touchdowns this year. But then I guess beyond that, we sort of moved Max and Brandon, who were both playing corner last year, closer to the ball. Lots of good things happened. Again, Max, scored 2 of our 2 defensive touchdowns this year. Brandon went from mildly overweight corner to phenomenal, just all-around edge player, right? Was double-digit sacks, getting turnovers, picks. Didn't quite have the gas to score a couple of touchdowns. Tackles, but
things to work on.
But influenced the defending in the run game, sacking the quarterback, defending the pass in the air, like everything. So that was all of those guys. Just such a huge, huge part of everything we want to do in defense. And and then I guess if we want to talk about coaching and stuff, I think our most unheralded coach is Dave Steele, because every other coach is either louder, more in people's faces, or is delivering maybe a larger volume of stuff to more people. And Dave is our defensive line coach, who week in, week out has just held the guys to a standard of just like a focus to attention to detail. Right, like in the terms of the scheme that we changed this year, there was an awful lot of reliance on the defensive line just being disruptive and having a little bit less to think about in terms of two gapping or different responsibilities play to play. And what he turned that into was just a very, very refined set of skills that the defensive line were going to employ, finding very creative ways to reward them, to reward them. Handing out chocolate bars at midweek meetings because these guys are working certain moves that we've tried to install and work on the technique for. And when we saw them in a game, he would show up with a Mars bar, and obviously they're all defensive linemen and they loved it. So, but it's a way to reach the players as well, right? Just all of those guys, just so much credit in terms of like what we were able to do defensively this year.
No, absolutely, and you mentioned, I think that this year. Picking a defensive MVP was almost for me personally, was next to impossible. I think that you mentioned Brandon, you mentioned Mac, Tom Boyd, Tom Goodchild, like the entire defensive line was a great unit. Someone like Weirdo as well. Like we've had a tremendous amount of competitive evenness across the team, and they really fed off each other. I want to mention Jimmy. So we were very, very, very privileged to have like such an incredibly high level coach who was here in Belfast across 2 different years, but also has stayed plugged in and stayed helping, and certainly has been very invested in the club. And I wanted to know if they're considering that he is an EFL level coordinator and probably will go on to make this his full-time profession. Was there any real, what did you learn from being around a coach of that level?
I think that it was fun getting to talk to somebody about X and O's at such a high level. There are lots and lots of people all around Ireland that kind of know some things really well, but getting to talk to somebody that knows so much about a very broad variety of stuff, and his only interest in terms of furthering his profession is to learn more. So he's obviously very inquisitive anyway. That part of it was really rewarding for me, but I think in terms of like the things that he kind of gifted us was much more around the culture. One of the things he asked was, when you turn on the tape, like, what do you want to see? Like, what team do you want to be, right? And do you want to be the team that has 5 guys running to the ball and it's like, well, maybe this, or do you want to be the team that just has 11 guys killing themselves to get there and make a play, right? Is it going to be the team that has 11 guys plus some from the sidelines celebrating big plays, scores, turnovers. You know, is it a team that's invested and bought into each other? So I think that's a huge part of it. Again, just like another super high energy guy. You know, from every interaction that he had with the team, just showing up, you know, 8:30, 9 a.m. on a Sunday morning, coming to practice, just, you know, loudest guy in the room, and he's not the biggest guy, but you know, by any stretch. But I think just his excitement and love for football just bled into everything, and that was such a huge part of kind of like the guys, just like being all in on what we wanted to try and do. Was just, you know, there's only one way to play football, and it's just like full of passion.
Yeah, and just that investment in understanding the role. Whenever someone speaks with such authority, it's very hard to ignore that. Speaking of which, you mentioned about turning on the tape and seeing a team that you want to see.
Yeah.
I'm going to put you on the spot a little bit.
Cool.
You mentioned that we wanted to play fast.
Yeah.
How'd that work out?
Scrapped the no huddle, went back to huddling, started running 2-back bar.
Sounds like some Irish-American football there.
No, it's. I think that it would be very short-sighted to just sort of dig your heels in. That was certainly the vision. You know, but when we kind of got into it, you know, the first year was very much just about seeing who we had, what the team was at that point in time, and we kind of probably hung on to it a little bit longer than we should have. In year 2, we kind of like fully did away with it sort of midway through the year, and obviously back to full huddle, pre-snap checks and everything this year. But all of that, you know, is just around necessity, right? That's the player group that we had. You know, it was a team that we couldn't play 60, 70 snaps a game, right? We're going to play, you know, 45, 50 really high quality snaps of football, and that's going to serve us well. The defense is going to mitigate, you know, any volume of snaps that the other team may have, but it's always been about the kind of Jimmys and Joes, not X's and O's, right? That was the thing we needed to do for this player group. So that's what we did. Yeah,
you dug your heels in there and gave me nothing to work with in terms of coming back at you. That was a perfect answer. You're supposed to adjust to your players, right? And I was going to ask a question of knowing how much football we talk, you and I, knowing that your love for Tebow-led Florida offense as being your perfect vision of offensive football and not getting there. Like if it does leave a slight scratch in your soul.
Nah, we put Mo in at quarterback this year a whole bunch, so.
You got there, yeah. You want to talk about that experience, or even having him around to be able to do all these things?
Yeah, I think so. We wanted to put in the tight end motion sneak for a while. For the record, before the Chiefs did it, right? We talked about this, and they're just like WhatsApp receipts about that, right?
Yeah. All right, Andy Reid.
But we had it in. We had it in for a couple of weeks, and we've been talking to the referees about like when we were going to run it, and like the legality of him being like an off the ball player moving, and kind of like what him getting under center would look like. But I think he's probably the only person on the team that we could have done it with, right? Because like for someone who also has such a, you know, sort of high football IQ, the toughness to be under center and run something like a QB sneak was extremely valuable. We knew we were only going to get one shot at it as well, because once we ran that motion and got under center once, we could run it, and then it's not a surprise anymore, right? And like knowing the importance of that one single rep in the, you know, hundreds if not thousands of snaps all year, was really, really important. Now after that, we just broke the huddle and lined him up under center and kind of like did it sometimes anyway. But you know, he was able to talk about, you know, all of the time that he had, you know, playing for you know, the Trojans 2s and, you know, playing under you and KD, and you know, I can take snaps under center, I can do this. He was able to articulate the skills that he had and sort of offer ways to maximize those, right? Which is take snaps like a real quarterback and do ball handling like a real quarterback. So all of a sudden we had this, you know, ability to put a fullback under center, but still run our full suite of, you know, inside run, you know, off tackle runs, 2-back runs, like whatever we wanted, which was really, really like valuable, and it was really, really fun. Like obviously we scored a 2-point conversion in the final off that, where you know, we had a toss running back pass from Mo to Rayshon to Dom, which was just, you know, an awful lot of fun. But all of that just came from having somebody in, you know, in terms of Mo, who super invested in what we were trying to do. Like, you know, just wanted to add value any way he could. Didn't care if he was pitching the ball back to Rayshon or scoring a touchdown himself. Just how can I best help us to win? Yeah.
And it's a good way to move on to what I want to mention, is that Mo started the Trojans women's team, and I've been very privileged again to help him out a little bit with the team. And you invited a couple of those teams onto the coaching staff. And I think it's really important to mention coming up to our 20-year anniversary as a club, how we're pushing the boundaries of what's acceptable, considering the league that we walked into as young kids was probably not the best place for open-mindedness. And I just want to ask you exactly the kinds of investment Helen and Hannah brought to the kidded men's team as coaches.
I think it certainly wasn't something that was spur of the moment, trying to kind of bring them in. Like they were around anyway, right? The Helen coming down to work with the quarterbacks on some of the warm-up drills and kind of trying to improve herself as a player, and Hannah coming down to help facilitate that. They're around anyway, getting to talk to those guys, understanding that their love of football is just the same as everybody else's. They're super invested in it and they wanted to learn more anyway. So it's kind of like a really easy kind of text to send and be like, look, do you want to be involved in this in kind of like a more structured capacity? Doesn't have to diminish what you're doing in terms of like trying to still run some of the quarterback stuff and improve there, but when we're talking about meetings and organising stuff and kind of facilitating position groups, like, you just want to be involved essentially. And with Nick coming on, that kind of helped that as well. So Nick coming into DBs meant that Hannah could work with DBs with him. The player groups responded really, really well to it in terms of their engagement. It's a completely different coaching style, right? Than us running around kind of screaming at people and versus like both of them would be a little bit more on the positive lens of like the reinforcement. But it was really, really good. I think above all else, everybody on the team responds to people that are invested in them, and they certainly were. I like to think that they found it a rewarding experience, but I think they're equally such a big part of kind of what we're able to achieve this year. And I think it's helped them in what they're trying to do with the women's team as well. Hopefully take some of that experience back and kind of continue to push on all those dimensions. Absolutely.
I think that there's great synergy across the club and how invested both sides during our final day of the season. It was a great day. We had the women's team featured on the main pitch, and seeing the men all out in support was a wonderful moment. How was Helen's play calling? You gave her some plays to call?
Yep. Game 1, KD couldn't go, so I was calling plays. We obviously were up and kind of comfortable enough, so sort of handed off some play calling duties to Helen and proceeded to immediately turn the ball over, and it was entirely her fault for the play call. No one else could be blamed for any adjustments on her right or deciding where the ball was going to go pre-snap. It was just on Helen's play calling experience. So, yeah. That's the wonderful thing as a head coach. You get to pass the blame whenever you give someone a little leeway. I had no turnovers when I was calling plays all year. For real? Yeah, no, KD called the rest. Okay. So you would have scored more touchdowns had you... Yeah, we were only held back by my ability to delegate.
Listen, Phil, it's been a pleasure. Is there anything else you want to add at the end here? Any final reflections on our 6th Shamrock Bowl victory?
No, I think that the last 3 years has been incredibly rewarding. So I think for me, the only thing that I'll reflect on is just gratitude for everyone's belief in me and the opportunity afforded to me by the club. I think it's been one of the best things I've done in my whole life, and I couldn't be more thankful for the club or the players.
Thank you, Phil.